Hi guys, I'm about halfway home and I decided got a new topic for Bruce the Monk. And so today I heard about a poor young person who discovered that he was the source of the worst parents ever to live. Parents who only existed to cause him grief and pain and yell at him. And so to help him appreciate how his parents are the absolute worst, I decided that I would talk about some of the worst parenting I have ever run into to help him appreciate exactly how terrible he has it, so he can know that he is absolutely the worst off that he ever is. Or as possible, I'm being slightly facetious, and I'm giving you some examples of some genuinely horrible parenting so that you can be grateful for the parents that God has given you or that God gave you earlier in your life. I'm gonna straight up say that if you're under about 13, you're 13 or under, you really should get your parents' permission before you are listening to this, because I'm not pulling any punches. I'm only going to talk about parents that I have personally known or I've had to deal with their kids, or that my family has known, right? I'm not digging anything out of the National Enquirer. This is just the parenting that I encountered in 10 years of youth work. And for video, you can join me on my drive home. There's no moon out tonight, so you're basically gonna be, but hopefully we'll get it. So, I think that my first example of parenting that was regrettable came from somebody I knew in junior high and high school. My sister almost married this young man. This young man lived with his grandmother because his mother liked to bring untreated sex offenders home and give them private access to her children. So his mom let untreated sex offenders do whatever he wanted to, and Child Protective to the kids and Child Protective Services had to come and take them, and he ended up living with his grandma. I think his sisters ended up living with other family members. So his whole family was scattered because of this. He and his grandmother went to my church, and his grandma took all of his child support and welfare money from the state and used it to support a 6-pack a day cigarette habit. So he could barely afford school lunches so that she could get her drug fix in. That's my first example. I think up there on my list would be a youth group I worked with, and I discovered that one of the church elders was taking his son into the garage at night, and sharing pornography, exposing his own son to pornography, and they were both using that pornographic material together. I'm not going to say anything more because you don't want this video to be deleted from YouTube. So that one was up there. I know of a parent. So this is just a general parenting thing from a culture that I grew up with. The original Hungarian immigrants would have something that they would call, to keep their kids quiet, and again, here's a mild language, they would call it a sugar teat. That's not exactly what that pronunciation they used. And what it was is they would take a rag, they would soak it in water boiled with sugar and poppy seeds. So they made a sugar and opium a sugar and opium mixture to feed their kids. So they were feeding their infants opium on a rag to suck on, they would put it in their mouth and the kid would suck on it, and we would get really quiet. Gee, go figure, because you were drugging your kids with opium. And that was a cultural norm of the Hungarian immigrants that, in the 1920s and 30s was still going on. Because you can get poppy seeds like seasoning anywhere, and they would make this. So there's a whole culture where drugging your kids. A professional health worker who, for the sake of his licensure and his career, a professional mental health worker involved in the community, estimated that among the Native American population that he worked with, the 80% childhood sexual abuse rate was low, that it was probably higher than that. And so if your mother and father, if your parents aren't handing you over or using you themselves to be used in that terrible and an exploitive way, then I'm afraid that you've lost your competition for being the most destroyed child on the face of the planet. Let's see. One of my personal favorites, and I will remember this one till the day I die, was I was working at a Bible camp, and a pair of parents took their just turned 14-year-old son and put him, as he was standing literally on the bus, they gave him a hug, they gave him a kiss, said have a great time at camp. By the way, we're getting a divorce. By the time you get home, your father won't live with us anymore. That kid had a 3-hour drive to our Bible camp, and by the time he got to us, he was an emotional, devastated wreck. I mean, he was destroyed. He had nightmares so bad he was physically convulsing and screaming in his sleep. This was not a weak young man. He went on to become an airborne ranger. I ended up having to sit up with him that entire night, holding his hand so that he could sleep. I never have met the father who delivered that message, and given my sinful nature, I count that as a really good thing. So I'm going to pause this. I've got more.